The Last of Us Part 2, in the eyes of us here at Push Square, is a masterpiece. Naughty Dog's divisive sequel surpassed the hype and then some, with a shocking, heart-wrenching and visceral tale of revenge that subverted sequel expectations in a bold and brazen way. So with The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, a PS5 re-release, I was faced with some big questions. Why should I return to this Naughty Dog classic, and is it really worth the price of admission? At the very heart of those questions is of course the original campaign, which remains to be one of the boldest gaming experiences in PlayStation's decade-spanning history. It's been 4 years since Ellie's tale was continued on in bloody fashion, and now in 2024, it holds every amount of power that it did back then. Part 2 isn't for everyone, as its shark's expected narrative beats to recontextualise the first game with merciless brutality. You'll question whether you want to push the buttons on your very own DualSense controller, and whether that character you've grown to love is going down the right path. It serves as a potent reminder that Naughty Dog is one of the greatest to ever do it, and all of what makes Part 2 special is still here. But now, it's been made bigger and better thanks to this remastered effort. But how exactly is it bigger and better, you may ask? Well, we first have to consider what's new with The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. For starters, you have visual and performance enhancements thanks to the PS5, and then you've got new skins for both Ellie and Abby to wear in-game, a new speedrun mode, new concept art, behind-the-scenes lost levels, and most notably, a survival roguelike mode called No Return. It even has a guitar free play mode for those that love to strum a tune as Ellie, Joel, or game composer Gustavo Santaolalla. On paper, this is a pretty impressive remaster, especially when so many before it have offered up much less. But is it all as good as it sounds? Undoubtedly one of the first things you're going to ask is, how does it look? How are the visuals? Well, The Last of Us Part 2, which launched on PS4 in 2020, is easily one of the best looking games to come out of the previous generation, and it still holds up with modern releases to this day. What's more, thanks to backwards compatibility, it already runs at a boosted 60 frames per second on PS5. Now then, looking at the remaster, we have performance and quality mode options, with the former running at an upscaled 1440p at 60 FPS, and the latter rendering in 4K with a targeted 30 FPS. Additionally, for televisions that support variable refresh rate, there is an unlocked frame rate option, which does noticeably smooth out the quality mode, boosting the frame rate to somewhere around 40 frames per second. I don't really think the visual upgrade is worth the price of admission on its own, but this is still technically the best Part 2 has ever looked and performed. If you're comparing side by side, there will be a lot of pixel peeping to determine which is which, but in motion this is a noticeably smoother experience, which works brilliantly with the fluid and hectic combat. At the very least, it will ensure parity between The Last of Us Part 1 Remake and this, meaning the whole story can be experienced in one seamless and consistent level of quality. Arguably, the biggest technical additions to the PS5 version are haptic feedback and adaptive triggers. These immersive DualSense features are as brilliant as you would expect from a Sony first-party title, maintaining impeccably detailed rumblings and trigger resistance, making the game's already top-tier action even better. It's super satisfying as you aggressively reload your weapon, and it can even amplify an emotional cutscene with some subtle vibrations. Haptic implementation in Sony exclusives never fails to impress, and that's really no different here. And then there's the extra content, such as lost levels, which in themselves are an incredibly interesting addition to a remaster like this. These are partially developed levels cut from the main game, featuring developer commentary on their design choices and ultimate reasoning for being cut. I can't help but feel these have been slightly oversold, as the 3 levels amount to no more than a half hour of content, but what is there is fascinating. It's not often that we get to peek behind the curtain in games development, and it's cool to see where these levels should have slotted in when playing through the main campaign. Really, my biggest gripe with the lost levels is that I was left wanting more, and I would love to see other studios take note and start to include behind the scenes features just like this. But okay, let's bite into the real meat of this remaster, No Return. This survival mode sees players fight through 5 encounters before facing a boss. After each encounter, you will return to your home base, where you'll earn supplies to upgrade your characters, buy and upgrade weapons and crafting recipes, and select your next stage. Encounters range from capturing safes guarded by Seraphites to holding out from an onslaught of infected. To spice things up though, modifiers are randomly applied across your run, which range from Molotov rain to invisible enemies. Partner that up with the already brilliant and nail-bitingly tense third-person combat, and you have a roguelike that is continuously chaotic. It's hard not to compare it a little bit to God of War Ragnarok's recent roguelike efforts with Valhalla, which I think has a better way of allowing players to risk it all to improve their build. There are aspects of risk reward here, like being able to choose which encounter you'll face, completing gambit challenges mid-encounter for small rewards, and dead drops where you deposit crucial equipment like medkits for a big reward when you return to base. With this approach, I still sometimes felt like I wasn't fully ready for the boss by the time it inevitably came around, but The Last of Us isn't a power fantasy. It wants you to survive by the skin of your teeth, so in that sense, No Return excels. It also meant that by the time I reached the boss, sometimes after a 30 to 50 minute run, I really had to steady my nerves, as one fatal error could erase all of my work. I experienced a fair share of heartbreak and complete euphoria as I was ripped to shreds, or I progressed to victory. What I really appreciate about No Return though is its pacing. By the time I'd beaten the final boss, of which there are 6, I'd racked up around 18 hours of playtime. This will vary greatly depending on the skill level of players, but across my time, No Return managed to keep things fresh and engaging. There are 10 characters in total to play as, including the likes of Joel or Mel, Lev, Jesse, Tommy, and each of them have their own starting weapons, recipes, perks and playstyles. Beginning with Ellie and Abby, you unlock the next character by playing through encounters. As you unlock more characters, you also start to unlock new modifiers, gambits and encounter types. So, as you delve deeper into this roguelike mode, it steadily expands around you, becoming more dynamic and challenging in the process. Even defeating certain bosses will start to introduce new enemy types that will show up in encounters, like the Rattlers from the end of the game. It does mean that ultimately there is a point where you've completed No Return, as once every gameplay aspect is unlocked, only challenges for character skins remain, but even still, you'll likely have around 20 something hours before you've wrapped up the final challenge. And that's not to say there's nothing else to do once you've completed the challenges either. There are 6 difficulty levels to try out, including the infamous grounded difficulty, while daily and custom runs mean you can really play around with all the modifiers to make it as grueling an experience as you desire. Looking upon the whole package then, The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered is an excellent upgrade. In many ways, it's a sublime treat for fans of the series, with behind the scenes content that I lapped up, a survival mode worth the purchase on its own, and small, albeit present, visual and performative upgrades to one of the best games to come out of the PS4 generation. But more importantly, it's the perfect package for those looking to experience Ellie's tale for the first time. This divisive sequel still packs the same visceral punch that it did in 2020. Now partnered up with the Part 1 remake, The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered is the best way to experience this Naughty Dog masterpiece. And that is my review of The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. Let me know what you're thinking of this remaster down in the comments below, and just as a brief little bit of explanation, I know some of you will be thinking, how does a 10 out of 10 game then get a 9 out of 10 if it's technically better? The review is more specifically looking at the remastered content than the base game itself. I still think The Last of Us Part 2 is a 10 out of 10. So there's your explanation. But anyway, thank you for checking out the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're looking for more PlayStation video content like this, then remember to like and subscribe. But anyway, until next time, I've been Aiden, and this has been Push Square.